Now this is going to be a long one, so settle in, get yourself comfortable, pour yourself a mug or a glass of your favourite beverage or tipple, and watch your man annoy a nation of Queen fans.
What did I say?
During the meanwhilest.
During the meanwhilest. No, I
No,
don't
no.
like that at all.
Well, hello there. It is Dexter and me again. Only this time with one of our music videos, and not only is it a music video, but it's also an album ranking based one. Be careful you say that. So guaranteed to have around. I'm going to make a forecast here: 67 views by the end of this year. And for its limited reach, it's a video that will probably generate quite a few dislikes too, I'd imagine, as it's my highly subjective and personal ranking of Queen's 15 studio albums released between 1973 and 1995. So not everyone's going to agree. Oh, and original studio albums only, so no live or compilation albums at all. Now, you may or may not know that Queen is my all-time favourite band. I love them. I got into them in around 1978. Dear God, I'm that old now. I was 14 then. When a girl at school made a tape of News of the World for me. I fell in love with it. The tape that is not her. Sorry, Caroline, you probably dodged a bullet anyway. And then for Christmas that year, my parents bought me a new Hitachi mono cassette recorder and a couple of tapes, one of which was Neil Diamond's Greatest Hits, and the other one was Queen's latest album at that time, Jazz. It took me a few months then to collect all their albums, but firstly I nagged my parents to buy a music centre. Remember those? So I got them all on vinyl. Then in November 1979 I got the chance to see them live, and I'll put a link to a video where I talk about that and my other live music experiences above. I then went on to see them a further 5 times, I think 5 or 6, including Freddie's last ever appearance at Nebworth Park on the last day of their massive Magic tour. But that's by the by. I was also at the tribute concert in April '92 as well. Yeah, there we are. Anyway, I obviously have all the recorded works now. Well, the ones where Freddie Mercury appears anyway. It all got a bit pointless for me after his death, if I'm honest. And I figured what better thing to do on it's hardly a cold, drab autumn evening at the moment. It's like a summer's day, than to rank them in order of excellenceness. I'll also tell you my choice of favourite album track on every album, so not a single, an album track, something that no other ranking video does. Before I start though, revisiting all these records for the video brought home to me how generally inferior the artwork on Queen album covers is. I mean, they generally go for a band photo, but when they don't, there aren't many covers that make you sort of go, whoa, give you something to look at. Aside probably from News of the World and Innuendo, they're all pretty bland and average, apart from the ones with the band crest on, I guess. They also give you at least something interesting to look at for more than 2 minutes. So without further ado, here's my list in reverse order, of course. Coming in last is Flash Gordon. Not really an album as such, just some recordings really that went on to making the soundtrack of the film Flash. I think it was mainly Brian May's project, but it did spawn a couple of tunes amongst the otherwise Tangerine Dream-like atmospheric soundbites, with the most notable being the title track Flash, along with The Hero, which were then used as live show openers for a while. Standout track for me is The Hero. Next up is Hot Space. It was pretty hard being a Queen fan in 1982 when this came out. It was their attempt at a disco album, and not one I enjoyed, I can tell you. There are a couple of good tracks on here, but for me overall, even if it does have the Bowie collaboration in Under Pressure on it, it's a dud really. Standout track is Put Out the Fire. Next up is A Kind of Magic. Now, it gets a little tough ranking these next few sort of, later releases, as they're all fairly good to my mind. Now, this, though, is possibly the weakest offering, although the title track is quite superb. It's their second soundtrack album, with a few of the songs appearing in the movie Highlander, and the first album release after their triumphant appearance at Live Aid the previous year. As years have gone by, my favourite track on here, though, has become Who Wants to Live Forever, with the Adam Lambert vocalised version from the Isle of Wight concert, right up there with any of the spine-tingling moments. And the standout track for that reason is Who Wants to Live Forever. Coming in at position 12 is The Miracle. Now, this was their first album after the hugely successful Magic Tour. Now, I, along with countless other fans, hoped there would be a tour to promote it, but sadly, with Freddie becoming sick, this never happened. It's a hit on this album. This with some strong tracks and several big hit singles. Notable track for me being Was It All Worth It, a fusion of classical and heavy rock music that only Queen could pull off, really. The title track and The Invisible Man are other favourites. Interesting fact alert, the album was going to be called The Invisible Men until they changed their minds. Standout track for me, Was It All Worth It. Next up is Made in Heaven, Queen's last ever studio recording. This album is sadly notable, really, for witnessing the moment that Freddie was clearly unable to go on, with the tracks Mother Love and Let Me Live starting off with him singing, but then being finished by, Brian and Roger. A really sad moment. Apparently Freddie was in immense pain recording this album, but the strength of his vocal performance belies this, with it containing some of his most mature and majestic vocal moments. Some of the tracks are re-recordings of solo material from Freddie and other band members' earlier works, and the standout track for me is Let Me Live, actually. Top 10 then. At 10, Jazz. Now, this was the first proper Queen album I owned, as I already said, it being bought as a present from me folks for Christmas '78. Although only number 10 on my list, this is for me a really strong album, with some great standout moments like Fat Bottom Girls and the utter classic that is Don't Stop Me Now in particular. This album kind of marked a watershed between their earlier recordings and what was to come in the 80s. I got a pressing with the infamous Bicycle Race poster as well. Standout track for me, though, is, or standout album track is If You Can't Beat Them. Number 9 is The Works, which is probably their most accessible pure pop album, really, with such tracks as Radio Gaga, I Want to Break Free, Hammer to Fall and It's a Hard Life, all reaching the top 10 in the UK. And the rest of the album is equally strong, with not a weak moment on it, in my opinion. The video for Break Free, though, saw the end of Queen as a force in America for years. They just didn't get the humour of them dragging up and spoofing Coronation Street, I guess. I fortunately saw them live in 1984 touring this album, and the standout track for me is Machine's Back to Humans. Number 8 is The Game, Queen's first album of the 1980s, and the first to feature an actual synthesizer on it. Before this album, each sleeve proudly boasted a no synths line, highlighting the fact that the band themselves created all the sounds and noises on their albums. This album it is another really strong, somewhat poppy offering, maybe, with Crazy Little Thing Called Love, another one Bites the Dust, Play the Game, and Save Me, all featuring. Another album where I was lucky enough to see the accompanying tour. Standout track, John Deacon's Need Your Loving Tonight. And number 7 is Innuendo. Now, this was Queen's last proper album, I guess, with all 4 members appearing throughout. It's my favourite of their later albums, purely because it harks back very much to the early days with them throwing every sort of production trick they have at it. The title track gave them their first number 1 single since Bohemian Rhapsody, and is a real epic. Almost an entire album in a song, really. Freddie is in top vocal form in this album, all the more remarkable given the state of his health during recording it. This album contains a number of hit singles, all of them incredibly strong, and culminating with the unforgettable and sadly poignant video for These Are the Days of Our Lives. Standout album track for me is Bijou. At 6 is Queen's punk era album, News of the World. and it's unsurprisingly probably their most raw work at that. As I've said, this was the first whole Queen album that I heard, and I loved it as it opened the door to the band for me. From the foot-stomping opening to We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, through Spread Your Wings, and to the closing, My Melancholy Blues. There's hardly a weak spot on this record. The standout album track for me is It's Late. We're into the top 5 now, and really these could be in any order, but rank them I shall. And at 5, it's Queen's first album. It's by no means the weakest of their early offerings, just the production on the album suffers for the fact that it is recorded in a hurry, really during studio downtime, late at night or whatever. The rear cover of this album is a favourite of mine, though, with loads of early band photos. Standout album track for me is Doing Alright. At number 4, I put A Day at the Races. Now, this album contains not only my all-time favourite Queen song, but my all-time favourite song, period, in the John Deacon penned You and I. Pure rock pop music at its finest. This was the rather tricky follow-up to A Night at the Opera, probably Queen's magnum opus offering, and it was never going to top that record despite containing the classic Somebody to Love and Tie Your Mother Down. It probably rocks a little harder than its predecessor though, which is never a bad thing. Standout track for me is, obviously You and I. At 3, I've got Queen 2. Now, a much more mature and grown-up record than their debut, really. This is a really strong record, and one which you could easily label as, progressive rock, really, with some epic tracks like The March of the Black Queen, White Queen as it began, Ogre Battle, ending with their first ever hit single, Seven Seas of Rhye. Instead of there being a side 1 and 2, the album has a black and white side, each with their own atmosphere, really. Standout track for me, Father to Son. Right, here we go then. Number 2, what's he going to put here? A Night at the Opera or Sheer Heart Attack? Surely the latter, I hear you all cry. But no, at number 2, I have put A Night at the Opera. Controversial, I know, as this is their, their pet sounds, their Sgt. Pepper, even if you like. Brilliant as it is, and on any other day it would top my ranking. But to decide, I listened to them both as they should be, right through, and on vinyl as well. So you get the whole experience, holding the album covers, etc. And on that day, this came second. Bohemian Rhapsody and You're My Best Friend are the singles from the record, and the former is absolutely legendary, as you probably all know. I wonder if there's anyone anywhere, well, obviously there are probably tribes in the Indian Ocean, who haven't heard Bohemian Rhapsody. Standout album track for me is The Prophet Song. So by default then, that leaves Sheer Heart Attack as my favourite Queen album of all time then. And what an album it is, with every track on it really having the ability to be released as a single in its own right, I think. That they chose Killer Queen as the first single shows just how strong this whole album is. It somewhat waves goodbye to the more proggy offerings of Queen and Queen 2, laying the foundations for what was to come, albums laced with variety from the heavy rock of Brighton Rock and Now I'm Here to pure pop with Killer Queen, a Caribbean even inspired Misfire, and the odd ballad and even vaudevillian theatrics in the shape of Bring Back That Leroy Brown thrown in. In Stone Cold Crazy, they even invented speed metal, I think, with bands like Metallica citing it as an influence. It is such a strong and, in my mind, flawless album, really, that everyone should listen to it. I can't pick a stand-up track, but if you put a gun to my head, I'd have to say probably In the Lap of the Gods, Revisited. So there we have my ranking then. Probably a little surprise that the earlier albums make up the top of the list. It's the same for most bands or artists, really. Even the Beatles. Well, maybe they're an exception. I don't know. Perhaps I'll rank them next. Or maybe not. I could probably do without Death Threats, to be honest. Anyway, do you agree with my ranking or with my choice of stand-up tracks? I'd be genuinely interested to know. So pop down to the comments section and let me know whether you think I'm a complete fool or not. In fact, go down there and see what a fool I've been. There we are, a little nugget for you there. Right, that is it from a rather under the weather Dexter and me. He's just been to the vet this morning for his annual jabs, so he's having a bit of a lie down in the bedroom at the moment. Doesn't really feel like appearing on video, bless him. But I'm sure he'll be firing on all cylinders by this time tomorrow. Right then, that's it. So as usual, stay safe, stay well, look after yourselves, your loved ones, and your little pets, especially if they just come back from the vet, and be nice. All right, be nice to me in the comments. Okay, it's it's a hugely subjective and personal choice, obviously, and whatever choice you make, for that reason, you can't be wrong. Right then, see you all on Tuesday with a video looking at the use of extended low ISO values in your camera. Is it all worth it? There we are, isn't it a tenuous screen link? Okay, right, I'm off. Ta-ra.